Almost all American journalism is controlled by a few massive corporations. NewsVoice is a one-of-a-kind mobile app that tracks the bias and corporate interests that infuse the news stories we consume every day, and it's completely free to use. Go to newsvoice.com/Pakman to download it. So 3.5 weeks ago, I did a story for you guys called Dr. Fauci has been disappeared from Trump's briefings. That was nearly a full month ago. And at the time, we were seeing signals of what was to come. Get the doctors the hell out of the way. Stop talking about death. Stop talking about masks and people doing the stuff that they need to do. Simply start talking about reopening. And this is when I told you back 3.5 weeks ago that Trump was no longer going to have doctors at briefings. He would be shifting away from daily medical briefings where media get to talk to doctors like Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. They're just going to talk about the economy. It's going to be like the disease is over. They are going to normalize the coronavirus deaths. Not only did that happen, Dr. Fauci has been disappeared from interviews on television as well. He has not been seen since, I believe it was May 4th. There was a while where Dr. Fauci was pulled off of Trump's briefings, but he was still doing regular television interviews. No more. Fauci has been conspicuously absent from TV for more than 2 weeks now. It is completely, utterly, obviously clear that this is part of a concerted effort to make it seem like the virus part of the pandemic is over. Now, of course, you know this isn't true. We fortunately started to see sort of a slow decline in new cases, and that's, of course, very good. Deaths have been kind of up and down. If you look at a moving average, as we call it, they've also been on a decline. That's all really, really good news. But this is still a pandemic. We still have no effective treatment. We are still months from a vaccine. We are still shut down in a significant portion of state economies. But the doctors are gone. You just don't see them anymore. Dr. Fauci's last TV interview, again, I believe was May 4th. That's 2.5 weeks ago. He's been missing since. And I need you to understand that this is not a coincidence. He is missing not because nobody wants to interview him anymore. Media want to talk to Dr. Fauci. He's been pulled. Now, some of you might wonder, wasn't Fauci on a modified quarantine after he was exposed to people at the White House who tested positive for coronavirus? That shouldn't stop him from doing interviews. Dr. Fauci was regularly doing interviews by video conference before. He testified before the Senate via video conference. That is not the reason why Dr. Fauci is no longer on TV. If there was ever a week to have Dr. Fauci on TV, it would be this week. Good results from a vaccine trial. He works for the NIH, which is working in partnership with these private companies developing a coronavirus vaccine. This is just short of North Korean style propaganda. We've got a 100-year global pandemic that's ravaging the economy, our economy, and the global economy. Obviously, you put fast food CEOs on TV instead of an infectious disease doctor. And the other night on CNN, they said, we are no longer going to be allowed to interview Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. The White House is no longer allowing them to do interviews on CNN anymore. Now, you could say, well, CNN is fake news. Obviously, they're not going to be fair. Well, they're not being allowed to do interviews anywhere. And this is such a common technique. It's called hide the facts. There's an article from earlier this month in The Guardian from economist Robert Reich. And he wrote about Trump's 4-step plan to reopen the United States. And the 4 steps are: start removing income support so people have no choice but to return to work. One $1,200 check. Unclear that there's going to be another check at this point in time. Check, they're doing it. Number 2, hide the facts. And that's what we're talking about today. That's where Dr. Fauci fits in. This is where Florida not releasing cause of death fits in. Hide the facts. Number 3, pretend that it's all about freedom and, patriotism and liberty. They're doing that. And then number 4, Robert Reich wrote about this nearly a month ago, shield businesses from lawsuits for spreading the infection by opening too early. All week, Donald Trump has been talking about how he wants to see that made a reality. We're a backwards country. We need to be hearing more from doctors, not less. We do not need to be hearing from fast food CEOs. Trump did. I covered it live, and it was disgusting. Trump did a whole roundtable earlier this week with restaurant people, And they also found a psychiatrist willing to say, we've got to reopen the economy. Now, that's an entire other story. They have now been looking for random doctors willing to say, my medical opinion is we should open her up and let it rip. They did find one earlier this week, but they're hiding the truth. They are hiding Dr. Fauci, and instead they're bringing, the CEO of a chicken joint to talk about how important it is that we get back open. It is ugly, and it is bordering on the type of propaganda that typically we see from totalitarian countries, places where you have a real authoritarian. Trump's a wannabe authoritarian. He is very quickly becoming a real one. That includes hiding the facts here. Later on, we will talk about Donald Trump's threats to states over vote by mail plans. Really, really ugly, dangerous stuff. We'll continue covering this and other stories from today's program on the David Pakman Show Instagram. Follow us at David Pakman Show on Instagram, and follow me at david.pakman. Don't forget about little old me.